Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we have returned, this time to talk about Freehold plus 11 in the series of videos we've been making, where we're going to be discussing peculiarities about dungeons, tips and tricks, kind of like a strategy discussion. I don't want to call it a guide because it's really not a guide, but I'm just going to, we're going to watch the video, we're going to talk about areas of the dungeon that might give me problems. I'll explain to you what I'm doing and when, common pitfalls that I've learned in the dungeon, and hopefully we could talk more about, these strategy elements in a way that you will then understand and improve on your own based on my discussion. You can go on to help others as well. So today we're going to be talking about Freehold. This is easily my second favorite dungeon, the dungeon that I've been doing the most as well. It's a dungeon I really need gear from, and if you haven't watched my Blood DK video on gearing up in 5-mans, then you should know that Freehold has some of the best gear that we can obtain. A lot of very good haste items, and without question the best pure tanking weapon that could be in the game for 5-mans. So right out of the gate, you see Infested. All right, this is plus 11, so we have Infested, of course. And I'm really going to talk a lot about Infested in here because this is a dungeon with a lot of trash, a lot of very interesting trash as well. And the bosses as well, being tyrannical this week, are of particular interest. So just one thing, I did take this from the stream. Last time we did this, we did it just a regular recording because I did it off stream. But this one was particularly interesting. We did this on Tuesday's stream. And, this is a pretty good run, I think. We don't upgrade it. We come pretty close. Right after this run on stream, I actually did upgrade a 10. We did the exact same. The guy, it was the same group. The guy got a 10 Freehold instead after we failed to upgrade it. So we just did, we just did it again, and we actually upgraded it. So I'm going to show you guys some interesting points. Now, this week especially, these mobs here, you can't really pull them all in bulk. Typically, if these mobs weren't infested, I would open the gate out with some big burst DPS and HPS, and that would be heavily augmented by my ability to use Bone Storm, Dancing Wind Weapon, and spamming Blood Boils, Death and Decay down, all that. But you're not really going to do that. There's 3 packs there. 2 of them do feature Infested. Now, one thing that you're going to notice here immediately is a lot of these mobs on the left do have Infested. Now, the conventional route, or more really the route that I took by accident, something that I felt comfortable doing in the beta and I kind of followed through on live, was to just kind of go up the left side of the dungeon and just kill the packs there. Now, this is not a very good idea. I've learned a lot about this, so I hope to shed some insight onto what you guys can learn as well. Going up left side is great. There's a lot of, there's some good mobs you could fight over there. But this week, being infested, I realized that we have a pretty good opportunity on the right side here. There's a patrol that comes, it kind of goes to the boss and then all the way to the right side pack. And it's always problematic. Every single time I've ever done this dungeon and I pull the left side that I was just describing, that patrol always ends up getting in the way at some point. We just don't have the DPS to kill it quickly. Even patrolling, far away, it's eventually going to reach us, and it just always causes problems. So this week I said, you know what? Since there's Infested on the left side, let's go right. And boy, I'm glad I tried this because it is way better. And I think I've figured out perfect count in here as well. I think this is going to be a lot better route. So as you see, we're going to take the right. Now, a little bit of a tip here. Do not walk on the far right side there. Like, try to walk through the middle of that plank that I was just on, because if you walk on the far edge, not necessarily as bad for blood decays, but other classes, maybe with the pet or something like that, it might actually aggro the stuff down there. That actually happened to me in a couple different runs this week. People aggro something down there. Maybe their pet gets too close, or even sometimes the pet will run underneath the bridge that we're running on, and that will aggro stuff. So just be careful there. That is something that you want to be aware of. But if you do it right, if you do it like I did, all you got to do is just walk up here. You've basically only pulled 2 packs. There's effectively 3 packs in that area that you would need to pull, and most of them are pretty dangerous. So you've now skipped 2 out of 3 of them. So very good. The pack that we're pulling now, one of the dogs is infested, so very easy to CC. But another important thing to realize is that the boss cannot actually spawn until you kill this pack or the opposite pack. Something I don't show in this dungeon is you can skip some pretty interesting parts of this dungeon with a rogue, one of which is right out of the gate. You can actually go right. When you start the dungeon, instead of going the normal forward way, you can actually go right and use rogue skip to skip all the way. You can see them there. They're kind of behind the boss to the right. You see the 5 health bars there. Those mobs can die and then the boss will spawn, or the mobs in front of him will die and the boss will spawn. If you do go right, you're going to have some problems because people might end up getting knocked into the mobs are right at the front of the boss, and the boss will spawn after you kill the mobs, you might be right next to the boss. So just fair bit of warning. It's not shown in the video, but that is a viable way to do the dungeon. That is not how I do the dungeon, and it's probably not how I'm going to want to do the dungeon from now on, based on what we learned in this these couple sessions that we found this week on the live stream. Now, this boss is incredibly difficult, and there you see a great example of it. That guy just got womboed, as they might say. There's a mechanic on Tyrannical, hits very hard. He turns around and shoots a player. This target is going to get hit, I think, no matter what. I don't think there's any way to avoid it. If you guys know otherwise, let me know. But I'm pretty sure that one person is always going to get hit by that Azurite powder shot. And then, if anybody else is near it, they will also get hit. So this complicates the encounter. You really want to try to stay spread. It's not very easy when you have all these puddles of poop, literally poop, on the ground, and that is not great. Now, the other problem here is the bird that he is mounted on, about 75% into the, or 25% into the encounter at 75% health. The boss is going to dismount, and the bird is then going to start charging around. Now, I have a weak aura for it. I don't think I actually have it on in the stream, but later on we found out, some good weak auras for dungeons. I've been using them. One way or the other, you have to be very aware of this mechanic, because this mechanic can not only knock you into bad things, but it's going to do a lot of damage to you outright if you get hit by it. 100% avoidable. You just look at where the parrot is facing and move. There's actually a lot of mechanics like this where the boss has a mechanic where it's going to be a charge. It's going to face a direction. People have to look for that charge or, that specificity on the ground. And a lot of people do not. Now, what you see there is I actually drink from the bottle. As you see, the healer is dead. This is slowly turning into a disaster, but I'm able to save it as a blood DK. Obviously, very powerful. Hopefully, you guys have seen just how powerful blood DK is by now. But just in case you're struggling there, I don't exactly know how that drink works or why it's even part of the encounter. He's going to drink from it. You could interrupt it, and then you could glug, glug, glug yourself, and I guess it heals you. I don't know if there's any detriment to doing so, but it does seem like if you need some healing, you can do it, and I guess perhaps the other players in the group can also do the same. From here on, we are met with a very interesting part of any dungeon, really. One of the most interesting parts is this just absolute mess of trash coming up here. There's a lot of yellow mobs, a lot of kind of high density packs all in one cluster, and fundamentally this area will change every single week. Now, there is one of, I believe, 3 different options. Fairly certain it's 3 different options that you have to deal with. We're only going to talk about the one that we see in this dungeon, but realize that this will change based on which week Freehold is demonstrating for you guys, okay? And first things first that I want to talk about here is this mob, like pretty much these mobs. So first of all, this mob that I have skulled, you really want to interrupt this mob. Very, very, very dangerous cast that if it gets off and you're all grouped up on this bridge or really anywhere else, you're going to get destroyed by this thing. There's other mobs that synergize against it, and that is not good. So you really want to worry about that above all else. Skull it. This mob here that we're fighting now is going to charge, and that is also not good because it'll stun you. So these two things, like I said, they synergize against each other. That mob is going to try to charge you, and it might charge you and stun you, and then the caster mob is going to erupt the ground with the water, and you're going to absolutely get destroyed by that, okay? Now, what you're seeing here is very, very interesting. This mob is not actually tethered to the pack that it's in for some reason. I don't really understand why. It's called a brute, okay? Anytime you see a brute in this dungeon, it's not tethered to the pack that it's standing next to, and I don't really understand why, okay? I'm not really sure what to say about that, but just be aware of that. A tip for free right there, okay? Otherwise, keep the oarsman interrupted. Watch, I believe it's a duelist charge, and yeah, just be careful with necrotic, or infested, because these mobs that spawn from there, oftentimes they might go in ways that you don't expect them to go because of how much, there's trash everywhere. It's all around you, and if you pull too much of it, you're going to be in trouble. Now, I think this place is particularly difficult last week on infested, or on necrotic as well. I got the 2 backwards, didn't I? Anyway, this pack is very interesting. I want to talk about this real quick. I don't know if we're actually going to pull it right now. But this is a pack that has the rat as infested. Typically, last week, a different rat, one of the smaller rats, was infested. A lot easier to deal with. No big deal. You can just CC, whatever. But this big rat, you can actually just pull it and quickly crush the mobs around it. Now, typically, I'll see a lot of people might want to just CC one and kill the mobs around it. That's kind of how I've been dealing with it 95% of the time. But on packs like this, and we see packs like this in Atal Dazar, Toldagor, a couple other dungeons, where it's a big mob kind of followed by his cronies who are very, very weak mobs, and it almost feels like they're only there to make some affixes harder. I'm not going to accuse Blizzard of that, but let's just put it on the table. I think that's pretty much what we're doing here. So as you see, I'm going to say, big middle finger to Blizzard. We're not playing by your rules. We're going to just AoE this stuff down right on top of the infested mob. And because they have so little health, and the infest really doesn't heal that often, it does get out of controller because we pull extra. But regardless, if we did not do that, I think this is a pretty good idea. I don't think you really need to waste time. And I would say that is a pretty good tip for anyone. If you're pulling and you see a mob, like a big mob that's infested with a bunch of fodder around it, don't necessarily worry about that. You can just pull like it's a normal pack. People can burst down the mobs and you won't have as much problems with it as if you're just sitting there waiting to CC. So anyway, you see us approaching this middle area here. This Vulpera creature is actually part of the weekly event. There are 5 of them scattered around, and you do need to have 5 separate players talk to one. So every single person, I believe, I'm not 100% sure of that. That's the way it appears. I don't know if it's actually true if you need 5 separate people, but regardless, it does look like, I don't think you can just go one person and get all 5, one way or the other. So that's going to make soloing a lot harder, isn't it? Anyway. So here, another rat pack, as they might say. And the mobs just die really quick and they all bust. So that's not great, but Healer is up to the task. Anyway, there's a couple other of the Vulpera kind of to our left right now. And there's really only one pack blocking 2 of them. So that's pretty good. If you're doing this week, this week's almost over. But if you are doing this week and this infested combination and, this mechanic of Freehold exists still, just be aware that this is where you want to do. So there's actually one pack on the other side there. I was just looking at it. Same deal here. We want to try to split these up and get them the best way as possible. But once again, the brute that is over there is not actually tethered to this pack. I don't want him to not be tethered. So this is like a word for the wise in both directions. If you really need to skip that mob, you can. That's great. But you don't really need to, especially this week. So it's almost a pain. I grip one mob and then, 2 come, but a third doesn't. So I have to taunt him. And then, people are aggroing these yellows. It's going to be interesting. I'm very interested to see how Freehold, the challenges of Freehold proliferate over the weeks to come. Especially once we have bolstering. I think bolstering is going to be a very interesting fix. And maybe even teaming too next week. I believe we'll have some very interesting things to say about teaming next week. So maybe next week we'll make a video on teaming especially. But anyway, this one, you're just clearing it as fast as you can. And just be aware. There's a lot of trash here. A lot of yellow mobs. Infested. They can be going in any direction. You really can't guarantee which way they're going to be going. Now, okay, so actually I make a mistake here. This is good. I'm glad that I showed this in the clip. I pull these mobs. We did not need to pull these, okay? So you're seeing me make a mistake. Do not make this mistake. We're wasting a lot of time here, wasting count. It's not a good idea. Do not pull this pack. We do not need this pack to actually be killed to talk to the Vulpera that is there. And again, this will differ week to week, but there's a pack standing relatively close to the Vulpera. I didn't think it would be possible to talk to it. It absolutely is. You can walk right up to it, talk to it without aggroing this pack, okay? So there's one here at the bottom of the stairs, and then there's one at the top of the stairs. Both of them, you only need to pull the pack that we pulled earlier that I was describing. You do not need to pull this pack right here. You'd be saving yourself a lot of time not doing so, okay? Now, I don't know. Yeah, there's another one all the way across. I think we'll show that as well. Same deal there. There's another brute who is going to not be tethered to the pack, which is unfortunate. It would be great. I guess it would be great if the brute was infested, because then seemingly I'd be able to grip the brute and the rest of the pack would just stay there. I don't really know what to say about this, but you're going to see it once again in action. 3 mobs. One of them's a brute. One of them's an oarsman, and we will grip the oarsman. The brute will just stand there. No big deal at all. He doesn't seem to care. But anyway, we taunt him over. So yeah, just keep that in mind, all right? That's the trash, one of the hardest parts of the dungeon, and it is going to change pretty much every week. There's going to be some weeks where it's a lot harder, but in general, just keep the oarsman interrupted. Watch for the stun from the, I believe, duelist, and keep in mind that the brute, for some reason, is not tethered to the pack. Maybe it's related to infested in some way. I don't really know how it could be, but you never know. Maybe you guys will know more about this than I will. So anyway, with that being said, we're on to I look at as the second half of the dungeon, even though there's a bunch of stuff left. We've completed, I think, one of the harder parts of the dungeon, and as you see, we're about halfway through the timer. I think that's about where you want to be. A little bit faster. Obviously, like I said, we do not complete this time. But at this point, we have now drinking all the beer. You're going to see these mobs are still yellow. Actually, I guess we're still working on that. Oh, yeah, so there we go. Now they're good. You'll know that you've successfully completed it because the 3 bosses will go from yellow to 2 only being red, 1 green. I don't have the friendly nameplate on, but I assume that it would be there. And luckily, this week is actually pretty good because on the right side of the pack, the opposite side of the road where we are facing currently, there's another pack there. Typically, I would try to combine them into one, but it's pretty cool because we allied with one of these captains. Some of those mobs are not active. They're actually on our side, and they won't actually fight us, as you see them walking around to the right there. So that's pretty cool. This leads to a very different mob count this week, but again, it is going to change every week, and yeah, I don't know. So anyway, this week, the captain that we have is going to periodically stun the boss. It always seems to stun the big guy with the barrel. I don't know much about this. Maybe you guys know more. I'd love to have a discussion about this. I try to look it up, but there just doesn't seem to be a lot of information. It doesn't seem like a lot of people know what's going on here. But one thing I do know that is going on is this fight is very odd. The skull marked mob. He's there. You see that giant kind of like a light white. Oh no, that was his charge. But anyway, he's gonna throw this blade out. There you go. This whirlpool of blades. It's like kind of like a blue blade that's spinning at us. All right. It needs to reach him. I'm fairly certain, like 99% certain. But it'll knock you back. And it's bigger than he is. Let's put it that way. So you almost have to like fiddle your way into it because you can't get knocked back because then the boss is going to move and follow you. And you don't want to be stood in it because it does a lot of damage. But you can't be close enough to it without it potentially hitting you or knocking you back for him to pick it up. So I don't know. Very odd. If anybody knows more about this, let me know. We've had a discussion about this on stream. And yeah, I don't really know what to say about it. But as you see, yeah, anyway. So yeah, the way I look at it is you really just want to burst one of these down. There's going to be a different, combination of bosses every week. Yet again, Freehold's different, pretty much 1 out of every 3 times you do it, and that is going to change the bosses, but also change what the the boss that's not fighting you, what it actually helps you with, and that could change every week as well. This week we have, I guess that I don't even know what to describe. I don't know how to describe it. It's going to stun. I think maybe you want to keep the boss in that small gray, whatever that brown swirl. I think it's going to help. I'm not really sure. Let me know if you guys know more. But anyway, one cool thing here is the infested mob is actually running away. It's an infested monkey, and we've allied, I guess, with the monkeys. So the mob that is infested is running away. We actually had a similar situation happen. The mob that was infested on the prior pack before we pulled this boss, one of them was on our side, so we didn't have to fight it, and it didn't actually heal the mobs we were fighting either, to my knowledge. So that's pretty cool. But maybe it would, just like we dealt with the mind control mob that was infested last week. Even though it was on our side, it was still healing the mob. So just be aware of that. There's some peculiarities with how infested works, like the mobs can be all over the place. You never know when you can see them. Like I was talking about on stream, this place has a lot of trash that you would never even think about pulling, yet they actually added infested to some of it. So it's very interesting. But anyway, here's a pretty unique mob set. You just want to CC this. This is a place. Now watch this mistake. Watch it. Here you go. Huge mistake. Let me tell you what happened. The mob gets sheeped. Sheep moves. I forgot. I try to put D&D. I try to thread the needle with D&D. And boy, do I mess up. That is a big mistake, and it's going to cost us some time here for sure. Watch what happens. So I put D&D down, and the mob wanders into the D&D and now has broken. I'm not actually sure how, but it's because of, I'll take full responsibility. It broke, and it gripped me to it, and now we aggro the big guy. So boy, what a big mistake. I really have to take full credit for that mistake, and it's really messed us up here. I don't think we wipe. I can't remember, but yeah, it's not don't do that, okay? As a Death Knight, do not use Death Indicator pull. I've been using the slow D&D, and it's still hard to get used to not wanting the mobs to be slowed when they're running to me. It's one of the better ways to pull multiple mobs. You get a little threat on all of them, even though D&D does not do a lot of damage. It's still useful. But yeah, this sheep is going to move. Remember that. 2018. It's been a while since I've cared about sheeps, but as you see, they move around a bit. Kind of used to the Demon Hunter or, Banished or something like that, where the mob is kind of stationary and you don't have to worry about it. But sheep still wanders around, and it still heals the mob to full. So people sheep mobs in the pack that you're fighting sometimes because infested. They don't realize that you can just kill the infested mob. They'll sheep it, and the health will be going up. Not ideal. So anyway, keep that in mind. Anyway. So yeah, that's a big mistake we made. Hopefully you won't make it as well. Now, I've seen a lot of people talk about going left here. I've never tried it, and I've seen other people talk about going right here as well, going behind this house. But I'm here to tell you that I have devised a what I believe to be near perfect mob count. It's not quite as good as a Taldazar, but it's pretty good. But it does involve a Warlock. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna pull this pack. This pack has no infested. Got a little bit of caster damage. You want to just keep them interrupted. Actually, no. I guess yeah. The caster is on our side this week, so we don't even have to worry about it. I believe any of the monkeys are part of the brawler, whatever this group that this drunk group where they drink a lot. No surprise, monkeys drinking a lot, right? I guess that's normal, but anyway, we don't have to deal with it. So what we are going to do now is mount up. I fail because I'm busted, but I'm going to move anyway, even without a mount. We're going to move inside here. Now, this is not a goal that I planned for, but one thing that you can do here is pull this and another pack up to the right. It's going to be weird how it happens in this video, but in every other run, what I've done is we pulled this mob and the pack that's kind of directly in front of my character now. You see it? There's like 3 or 4 mobs up there. They're pretty easy to deal with. Nothing infested this week. And this is going to give us perfect count. It's going to give us the exact count we need. Now, don't forget, we pulled an extra pack here. So the count that you see in the video is not the one I would recommend. But if we pulled that guy and the, the pack directly in front of where I was showing you before, which is actually going to get, you'll see, it's pretty funny. But anyway, well, actually, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, we pulled that pack and this pack while, we come in here, pull those 2 packs together, and then a couple seconds into killing them, you talk to the guy. All right, the guy that starts this pig event, it's a full 1 minute of RP. So obviously, you don't want to be wasting a 1 minute of time. You know what I mean? If you're going to miss a dungeon by 1 minute, let's make sure it's not to this RP, okay? Another big tip here, which people still don't seem to understand. The pig lands on skull. This is something I learned back in mob challenge modes, actually from Shadowpan Monastery. Anytime you need to click something, you can actually have multiple people click it all at the exact same time, and it'll kind of register as 5 out of 5. Now, it's not really the same situation as it was in Shadowpan. It's very different. But regardless, if everybody was facing the skull and all spam clicked the pig the second they could, we would have 5 of 5 instantly, and the mechanic would be over, saving a lot of time. But regardless, not that big of a deal. If you get it, it saves a little time. If not, no big deal. So here we go. So we're fighting Ludwig von Tortollen, obviously a German turtle who did not make it to the water. Unfortunately for him, he is not going to make it to the water. He's going to make it to a graveyard after we kill him, scoop out the remainder of his shell, and eat his flesh, as it is quite delicious. He will not appreciate that much, but regardless, just want to let you know, this mob is fortified. It's affected by fortified, that is. This week it's not fortified, so it's a lot easier. We did it last week, and the mob hits very hard, so just be aware of that. There is some peculiarities with things that are fortified and things that are not fortified, but that doesn't really apply to this dungeon. We'll talk about that in other dungeons. Now, here we go. So what happened, the turtle shell knocked a player into it. And this is a big deal, because we obviously don't want to pull extra trash. But it led me on to something very unique, and this pack is actually really easy. There's no reason that you should be scared of it. It's a free pack. It's a lot easier than the patrol. So the other option was the patrol, right? If we pull the patrol, we wouldn't have perfect mob count following the route that I've detailed, okay? That is, at the start, kind of going right on that bridge, getting those 6 mobs there, or whatever, 6 or 7 mobs, and skipping what we skipped, coming up here, we needed 1 extra pack, okay? Now, something else that's happening here that I want to alert people to that doesn't actually cause a problem this run, but did cause other problems. You see, the pets are actually attacking a yellow training dummy up there, okay? Just be aware of that. That can aggro mobs, and it could cause a lot of problems, but it doesn't happen in this video, so I can't say a lot about it. What I can say a lot about is this guy right here. He is an absolute brutal boss. One of the hardest bosses. Really, really complicated encounter. And as you see, devastating our group very, very quickly. 2 people die out of the gate, but I'm here to tell you, this fight is actually extremely easy if you know what you're doing. We're doing it on +11 Tyrannical. Clearly not prepared for this fight. So I'm going to give you guys the TLDR version. This is all you need to know. Don't get hit by these sharks. That is it. And it sounds easier than it is, but I'm here to tell you that it's actually not that hard. One thing I'm doing right now is kind of tanking the shark. The shark is always going to pick the closest target to it. So if you're really struggling as a group, you can have your tank run over to it, kind of get aggro on it, and just let it jump around by him. You could use a defensive, or you can just play a Blood Death Knight and not worry about, I don't know, whatever. Obviously, the other idea is to run it through the chum that's on the water. It's on the ground there. It slows it down. It really doesn't slow it down very much, but it is the intended strategy of the encounter. And then another thing that I want to bring up is, actually, for some reason, whenever I run with a healer in our guild, Vicario, he plays a Goblin Priest. Man, that boss is hitting hard. Wow. Anyway, he plays a Goblin Priest, and we're speculating that this is part of it. But anyway, whenever the shark fixates on him, it does nothing. It just kind of flounders around. He doesn't take damage. It doesn't move. It just stands like right on top of him, and he doesn't take damage. Has anybody else had this? I don't know. If you play a goblin, maybe it has something to do with the height. His speculation was that his character model is so small that the goblin is trying to attach to the center of the character model, and that the shark is trying to attach to the center of it, and it is like under the ground, therefore it's not meleeing him. I don't know. But I wonder if maybe it'll happen with Gnome as well. If you guys play Alliance, let me know. My apologies if you do play Alliance, but hey, 50-50 chance, I guess, getting the good race. So anyway, yeah, if you pick Gnome for some reason, maybe by accident, then you could tell me maybe this works and this ends up being a good thing. So I don't know. But anyway, this boss is extremely dangerous. Really, really dangerous. But here we go. Just move. This is it. End of the discussion. It sucks. Your DPS is going to suffer. But if you just move always and you never find yourself in a position where anybody is near the shark, you can't die. You know what I mean? He's going to throw the shark on you. Just move. You know what I mean? It's not that big of a deal. It sucks as range, sucks as healer, I'm sure. But it's really not that big of a deal. So again, we are done with count. We skipped this patrol, which is down here to the left. We're going to skip it again. We don't want to pull that patrol. Just keep that in mind. You don't want to pull that patrol. It's too many mobs. It's too awkward for the count that we're following. If we did not pull extra mobs, this is what we would need. These two mobs here. We're going to need these two for near perfect count. It's going to be slightly over, but it's only two mobs. It's really not that big of a deal. If we do this right, this is exactly what we want. Perfect count coming on these two. And with the Warlock, we can do something very interesting, which I believe we are going to do in this. I think I'm going to show it off here. Now, people are saying that you could do something even more interesting in chat, as you see on the screen. People are basically saying that we could have skipped even this pack. And I don't know if that's true, but I'm trying to get Warlocks to do it. Basically, you could put a portal from this bridge up to there. And people are saying that maybe you could put the portal on the bridge up to where that cannon is. You can't really see it because the angle I have my camera at and the stream boss thing there. But people are saying it's possible. I've never tried it. I haven't successfully replicated it. And the healer and the Warlocks I've ran with say that there's a line of sight issue. But what you can do is you can put it right at the edge of this bridge, right up to that blue marker. And you'll be able to skip two of these packs. Now, one of them is a patrol, one of them is not. But regardless, they're both very, very, very dangerous packs. And we're over mob count. You're going to be over mob count unless you did the rogue skip. If you do the rogue skip, you're not going to be over mob count at this point. You're going to need these packs anyway. That's a whole nother discussion. Maybe we'll have it someday. But look at this. Very interesting. The pillar is preventing me from clicking on this portal. So I actually have to move in front of the portal just far enough so I'm in front of the pillar, but that I can actually kind of go back behind my character and click the portal, and it will take me over the gap there. So just be aware of that, okay? Otherwise, we're done. This is the final boss, and he's one of the easier bosses in the game. There's a couple peculiarities about him. First of all, he's got a lot of health. Something I learned after this week of 5-mans as well, being on Tyrannical. You want to keep this boss in the corner here. I really like fighting him in this corner. I'm not doing it right now, but I will do it shortly. I'm going to keep my back to this wall here. It looks like you can get knocked off this wall, but it's actually impossible to get knocked off. Luckily, I didn't know that when I first started doing this fight. You cannot get knocked off this platform. It's impossible. I think you can get knocked off the side if you're not a tank. I've been knocked off it, and then I've been gripped right back up because of this weird new threat mandate that's possible. The boss will never run away from, never path away from its logic, from its normal logic. It will just grip you to it, which just happens all the time. Another mistake I'm making on this pull, quite literally, is pulling that mob. That mob is going to charge to a player, and if it gets to that player, it's going to explode for a fair amount of damage. I was gripping it, thinking it'd be better to just kind of cleave it down, but sometimes, now it doesn't actually happen in this group, luckily, but sometimes I'm gripping it on top of a group member and they're dying because of that. So it's not a great choice. Instead, what a good choice is to root it. If you can prevent it from getting to its target before the cast is over, the cast will end and the mob will kill itself. It'll explode and the mob will die and you'll never have to deal with the damage that it deals. So, great option for this is Frost Mage. We have a couple Frost Mages in a couple groups that we did this week, and all they got to do is Frost Nova it or root it in any other way, and the mob will just expire, just sit out there lonely and afraid, probably honestly quite afraid that he's now, his life is now about to end after being summoned by quite a short man, let's put it that way. Harlan is, but anyway, so that's that. Now, here we start to see the second part of the fight begin, and there's a lot of fire, obviously. And what I do is kind of just, I'm not really refined, but this is what I would normally do, go from left to right. People drop on the left, then by the time people might drop on the right, the fire from the left had dissipated. We just move back and forth. Luckily, we have we have one melee, but he's doing a very good job not dropping it on top of me. It can get pretty dangerous if it drops it on you, and even later in the encounter, which you will see, it feels like it targets me too, but I don't really know about that. Anyway, at the final 25%, I believe, he does a lot more melee damage as well. Just wanted to be aware of that. It does a lot more, so if you have CDs up, you want to save it. But otherwise, that's Freehold. I think we have a pretty good route. Near perfect mob count with the Warlock portal. If you have it, a very good tip. Otherwise, I really like this dungeon. One of my favorites. Definitely something you want to do as a blood DK if you can. There you go. You see it targets me, and I almost died to it. But regardless, that is that. So thanks for watching. We will see you guys in the next one.